The silent challenge. The gym smelled of sweat and old leather. The walls echoed with the sound of punches against punching bags, the creaking of skipping ropes and the low murmur of fighters preparing for another training session. Among them, Mike Tyson, then in his early 20s, already a force of nature, moved like a predator among smaller prey. His body, sculpted with dense, explosive muscles, made even the most experienced take a step back when he passed. It was then that he saw him. Bruce Lee was standing by the window, observing the movement with that calm that only masters possess. He was wearing a simple shirt, loose pants, and his arms, although defined, didn't have the thickness of bodybuilders. For Tyson, who had measured his strength in tons of iron and opponents knocked out before the first round, this was almost an affront. "Hey, Chinese," called Tyson, his voice full of provocation. "You there, with those thin arms? They say you're fast, but look at you. It feels like a strong breeze knocks you over. You're too weak to really fight." The other fighters stopped. Some laughed, others just watched, curious. Bruce didn't turn around right away. He continued looking out the window, as if Tyson hadn't said anything. Then, slowly, he turned his body, his feet firmly on the ground, his dark eyes fixed on the young champions. "Weak?" Bruce repeated, his voice soft, almost a whisper. "Do you think strength is just muscle?" Tyson crossed his arms, his chest puffed out. "Of course it is. Look at me. I break bones with one punch. And you? What do you do besides dancing around?" Bruce smiled, a smile that wasn't mocking, but one of someone who already knew the end of the story before it even began. "Let's see," he said, extending his hand. "Give me your arm." Tyson hesitated for a second, but his arrogance spoke louder. He extended his right arm, his biceps bulging, ready to show his superiority. Bruce held your wrist with one hand, his fingers light, almost as if he wasn't exerting any force. Then, with an almost imperceptible movement, he pressed a specific point on Tyson's forearm. What happened next was instantaneous. Tyson felt a sharp pain, as if lightning had gone through his arm. His knees went weak, and for a moment, he thought he was going to fall. The hand that seconds before was a gun now seemed to be made of lead. He tried to pull his arm back, but Bruce held him with a firmness that didn't come from brute strength, but from something deeper, more precise. What did you do?" Tyson managed to say, his voice hoarse. Bruce released his wrist and took a step back. "Strength is not just what you carry on your shoulders. It's what you do with what you have." He pointed to his own temple. "Here. And here. Then, for the chest. And here too." Tyson rubbed his arm, still feeling the strange tingling. He wanted to retort, he wanted to prove that he was stronger, but the words died in his throat. There was something in Bruce's eyes, something that went beyond technique, beyond fighting. It was the confidence of someone who knew that, in the end, true strength was not measured in kilos, but in understanding. The gym was silent. Nobody laughed. No one dared to say anything. Tyson looked at Bruce for a moment longer, then lowered his head and returned to his training, but something had changed. He was still the same fierce fighter, the same ruthless champion, but now he knew that there were forms of strength that he did not yet understand. And Bruce Lee, without needing another word, looked out the window again, as if none of that mattered. Because, for him, there wasn't. True strength never needed explanations. The weight of understanding. The following days at the gym were different. Tyson didn't challenge Bruce again, but he didn't ignore him either. He watched him from afar, as if trying to decipher a riddle that couldn't be solved with punches. Bruce, in turn, continued his training with the same silent discipline, as if the confrontation had never happened. But something in the air had changed, a less hostile, more curious tension. A week later, Tyson showed up at the locker room door while Bruce was packing up his things. The champion had his hands in his pockets, his body still marked from the sparring sessions, but his eyes less sharp. "You don't train with weights," Tyson said bluntly. Bruce looked up, but didn't stop what he was doing. I don't need it. Why? Because strength is not just muscle. It's movement. It's efficiency. Tyson frowned. You talk as if fighting was easy. Bruce closed his backpack and turned to him. It is not. But complicating what is already difficult is stupid. Tyson let out a dry laugh. You're fucking weird. And you are predictable. The champion opened his mouth to retort, but hesitated. For a second, it seemed like he was going back to his old habit of crushing anyone who challenged him. But then, something in Bruce's face, perhaps the same calm that had irritated him before, made him stop. Teach me, he said, finally. Bruce didn't smile. He made no gesture of victory. He just nodded, as if that was the answer he had been waiting for since the beginning. Training between the two became a spectacle in itself in the gym. Tyson, accustomed to dominating with brute force, now found himself forced to slow down, to think about each movement. Bruce corrected him not with words, but with gestures, a light touch on the elbow to adjust his posture, a slight deviation to show an opening. And, little by little, Tyson began to understand. It wasn't about being stronger. It was about being smarter. A month later, during a sparring session, Tyson threw a side kick that Bruce easily blocked. But instead of counterattacking, Bruce took a step back and lowered his hands. Why did you stop? Tyson asked, panting. Because you already know. Tyson looked at his fists, then at Bruce. For the first time, he didn't see an opponent. Saw a mirror. I'll still beat you, he said, but there was no anger in his voice. Bruce smiled, for the first time in a long time. Perhaps. But not today. And with that, the champion walked away, not as a defeated man, but as someone who had found something more valuable than victory. Years later, when Tyson was no longer the same fighter, when age and injuries had taken away some of his ferocity, he returned to the gym. Bruce wasn't there anymore. Some said that a school had opened in another country. Others, that he had simply disappeared, as he usually did. But Tyson didn't need answers. I knew what I had learned. He found a young fighter in the ring, a strong, fast boy, full of anger. And as he watched, Tyson did something he'd never imagined doing. He walked over and touched his shoulder. You fight well, he said. But strength is not just that. The boy looked at him, confused. Tyson smiled, remembering a man who had once taught him to see beyond his fists. One day you will understand. And, for the first time in a long time, Tyson left the gym without needing to prove anything to anyone. The weight of lessons. The boy, named Raphael, stood still in the ring, his fists still clenched, sweat running down his face. Those words echoed in his head like a punch that missed its target. Strength is not just that. He didn't understand. And because he didn't understand, he felt angry. In the following days, Raphael looked for Tyson in the gym, but the old fighter did not appear. Instead, he found a notebook left on the wooden bench, with training notes, movement diagrams, and, at the end, a hastily scribbled sentence, "The fight is a mirror. If you only see your opponent, you've already lost." Raphael tore up the page. 6 months later, in the regional tournament, Raphael faced a bigger, more experienced opponent. The audience screamed, but he barely heard. His mind was full of Tyson, of Bruce, of all the voices that told him he wasn't enough. In the second round, a well-aimed hook knocked him down. The referee started counting. 1. He saw the ceiling of the gym, the lights twinkling like distant stars. 2. He remembered the touch on the shoulder, Tyson's calm voice. 3. And then, something changed. It wasn't strength. It wasn't technical. It was the realization that the anger that drove him was the same that blinded him. 4. He got up. The fight ended in a draw. Raphael left the ring limping, his lip cut, but with a smile he didn't understand. In the locker room, he found Tyson sitting on a bench, as if he had been waiting for him. "You heard," Raphael said, panting. "I heard," Tyson replied, throwing him a towel. "But it wasn't about winning." "So what was it about?" Tyson stood up, knees creaking. "About not letting the fight define you." Raphael looked at his hands, still shaking. "What if I don't make it?" "You already did it," Tyson said, leaving. "I just didn't know." Years later, Raphael trained a group of young people in the same gym. Among them, a slight girl, with hard eyes, who fought as if each punch was a debt to be collected. He walked over and touched her shoulder. "You fight well," he said. "But strength is not just that." The girl looked at him, confused. Raphael smiled, remembering a man who had once taught him to see beyond his fists. "One day you will understand." And, for the first time in a long time, he left the gym without needing to prove anything to anyone. The hard-eyed girl. The years had softened Raphael's rough edges, but had not erased the scars. The gym remained the same, with its peeling walls and the smell of sweat and liniment, but now he was the gray-haired man who walked among the punching bags, correcting postures and telling stories. The slight girl, called Lucia, was the newest promise of the place, and the most restless. She didn't talk much. He trained until his knuckles bled, as if each blow was a response that never arrived. Raphael watched her from afar, recognizing himself in the past, the same contained fury, the same need to crush something to feel alive. "You hold the wrong fist," he said one afternoon, as she punched the bag with brutal precision. "It's not strength that's lacking, it's control." Lucia stopped, breathing hard, and looked at him with disdain. "Control doesn't win a fight." "Control wins war," Raphael replied, touching his own chest. "And yours started a long time ago." She didn't understand. "How could I?" At 16, Lucia carried an anger that not even she could name. Her father had abandoned her at 10, her mother worked 3 jobs, and the world seemed like a ring where she was always too late. Raphael knew this because, years before, a social worker had given him a report with her story. It was no coincidence that he had chosen her to train. "You're going to fight in the regional tournament," he said, tossing her a pair of new gloves. "But you won't just win. You will learn." Lucia spat on the floor. "I don't need lessons." "Then you will lose." She hated him for it. The tournament has arrived. The gym in the neighboring town was packed, the air thick with the expectation of blood. Lucia entered the ring with her wrists bandaged, her body tense like a rope about to snap. Her opponent, a taller and more experienced girl, smiled when she saw her. "First time?" he asked, dancing around. Lucia didn't respond. In the first round, he attacked with everything, as he always did. Wild blows, no strategy, just fury. The other girl defended herself easily, counterattacking with precise punches that made her stagger. During the break, Raphael approached. "You're fighting with anger," he said, dabbing his forehead with a towel. "And blind rage." "Don't tell me how to fight," Lucia growled, pushing his hand away. "Then you'll get it." She returned to the ring with her teeth clenched. In the second round, her opponent knocked her down with a left hook. Lucia fell to her knees, the taste of blood in her mouth. The audience screamed, some rooting against her. It was then that something changed. It wasn't a clear thought, but a memory, something Raphael had said weeks before: a punch is just a movement. It's what you put into it that makes the difference. She looked down at her shaking hands and saw not just herself, but all the times she had been knocked down and gotten back up. It wasn't just a fight. It was an answer. When he got up, he didn't attack with fury. Waited. She studied her opponent's movements, dodged a jab, counterattacked with a straight shot to the chin. The girl staggered. Lucia didn't stop. In the third round, he landed an uppercut that knocked her down. The judge started counting. The opponent did not get up. Lucia won. After the fight, Raphael found her at the back of the gym, washing her face in the sink. She was shaking, not from exhaustion, but from something she couldn't name. "I won," she said, as if she didn't believe it. "You won," he confirmed. "But it wasn't just you." Lucia looked at him, confused. "He was the one who taught you. He's the one who hurt you. He was the one who told you that you weren't enough." Raphael took a deep breath. "You took them all in that ring today. And he won." She looked at her hands, now clean of blood but still marked. They were no longer the hands of a girl struggling to forget, but of someone who had learned to remember without breaking herself. "And now?" he asked. Raphael smiled, throwing him a towel. "Now you teach someone else." Lucia held the towel, feeling the weight of those words. For the first time, he didn't feel angry. He felt something like peace. And, like Raphael years before, he left the gym without needing to prove anything to anyone.